Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, the trap is set, the game is on, Gary Sinise, Charlize Theron, simply having wonderful Reindeer Games.
Suck it, Reindeer Games. 'Tis the season to be jolly.
Let's go!
Motherfucker go boom. Motherfucker go. Motherfucker go.
Ho, 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 and welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
First of all, before we even get into the intros, shout out to Twitter user @OffensiveLoons, who presented us with this wonderful gift of my intro joke, little song I sung there. He tweeted those out at us when we announced we were doing a Reindeer Games episode, and I was like, we got to work that into the episode somehow. So
Yeah, very funny. Thank you for that.
with their permission, I sang it poorly, I'm sure, but I hope everyone enjoyed it. And Ian, with the festive music, very well done.
Thank you. It's a whole holiday musical extravaganza this week in The Blast Zone.
For the one Christmas episode we're doing.
we just shove it all in there.
That's all right. There's always next year. We can do 2 or 3 next year and get more use out of it, because it's a damn shame we're only going to get to hear it once.
Well, you got to listen to this episode twice, folks, if you want more holiday fun.
2, maybe even 3 times. I don't know. I'm not sure how good it's going to be yet. So we'll see. If it's a banger, then give it 4 times.
Yeah, do it.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and holiday feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Reindeer Games, which we're talking about today. But before we get into that,
Can we join in the Reindeer Games? Can everyone join in? I hope so.
Rudolph can't, but everyone else, I think, is game.
Okay.
So let's get into it.
Come on in.
How are you doing this week, Ian? The holidays are in full swing. How are you feeling?
They are in full swing. I'm going to tell a quick holiday story, a cautionary tale, perhaps.
Uh-oh.
I don't leave the house very much, and when I do, sometimes on errands, I reward myself with McDonald's, which is sort of a reward and sort of a punishment to my
Sure.
body. But I'm still careful about COVID, so I do the curbside pickup. I did that the other day, sitting there waiting patiently, listening to an audiobook. All of a sudden, I realized half an hour had gone by, and the food didn't come out. And what do you do? Because there's no recourse in the app. You can't press a button that says, where's my food? So I'm like,
Right.
oh shit, I got to go inside and say, hey, I didn't get my food. And I went in, and there's a literal dozen people crowded around the counter in this little McDonald's, and a thick French fry haze is in the air, and it's hot and sweltering and sweaty and crowded. And people are just pressed up against the glass getting their orders. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm never going to even be able to get up there and ask what happened to my order. And so after about 60 seconds, I fled the place. I don't know why I didn't
Oh, no.
realize sooner. But just as I was leaving, a nice girl was coming out with the bag to my car. So I met her at my car, and the whole thing was a foolish errand on my part. But anyway, since then, I've been absolutely paranoid, and I'm testing myself with COVID self-tests every morning, because I feel like half the smell in that tight little hot place was French fries and half of it was Omicron. So we'll see. So far, I'm clear. It was just a really fun kind of experience that you can only have around the holidays.
I feel like if there was a COVID factory, just a place where COVID was manufactured and came from, that it would just smell a lot like McDonald's. So I
It would
totally
be, yeah.
understand where you're coming from.
Pretty much be a McDonald's. So we'll see. It was traumatic, but I think a couple more days of negative tests, and I will let that fade from my memory.
This Omicron, not to freak everybody out, but it's apparently like extremely contagious.
Yeah, we're in that phase where we're getting these scary stories.
Pretty frightening.
So we'll see. People are going to be listening to this some point in the future, a few days, a few weeks, a few years. I wonder where civilization will be when you are hearing our
boy.
voices. We don't know.
And yeah, watching Station 11 was a great idea, but I don't want to step on your show and tell. So thank you for that holiday story. It was very, I don't want to say inspirational. No, it was scary, but I applaud you for trying to reward yourself, even if it went wrong. You know, you deserve a
tried.
little treat now and then.
I still got a Big Mac out of it, so I guess I should be thankful.
It's not all bad. I just came back from a holiday lights extravaganza where you drive through a park that's been
Ooh,
decorated with lights.
Nice.
Me and my wife took our kids and we drove through this lovely display. It's a rainy night, so it wasn't that crowded. We didn't have to wait too long to get in.
But
And you
yeah.
stay in your car the whole time, which is double good.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
So the kids get some Christmas cheer and they don't have to be exposed to people.
And it's easy for you. There's no walking around, packing people in and out, just drive through and back home. I love that kind of thing. That sounds delightful.
It was nice, but then I rushed home to make sure I had time to talk about the 2000 movie Reindeer Games. But before we get into that, did you watch anything this week you wanted to talk about? I may have stepped on your...
Well, you gave away my secret. I watched Station 11.
Yeah.
It's brand new at the time of this taping. It's only out a couple days on HBO. I had heard about this book for a while. It's a famous sci-fi book, very popular. And it's one of them where I read the blurb a bunch of times. I'm like, oh, should I get this book? Should I read it? And I never pulled the trigger. And I'm like, oh, now there's a show. And one of our favorite podcasts that we both listen to, The Watch, our guys, Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald, just went nuts over it. They're like, this is the best thing all year. And I watched it and I think they might be right. It starts out as one thing, you kind of think you know what it is, post-apocalyptic flu pandemic. And it starts out showing you how things go down. And you get some hint that it's going to jump around in time. And boy, does it jump. The sci-fi pandemic part is interesting, but the storytelling is incredible. So cool, really unconventional, forces you to really pay attention because it's got this narrative that unfolds out of chronological order. So it takes a little bit of concentration to catch everything, but it also conveys so much story, very elegantly sparse and effective with the little pieces of time that it uses to introduce you to these characters. And I'm really thrilled about it and excited to see the rest of the show.
I am too. I've only seen the first episode, so I'm not as far along as you are. But what I've seen is very encouraging. We're both fans of post-apocalyptic fiction. And like you, I was aware of the book, but never pulled the trigger. I'm shocked I didn't buy it and put it on a shelf somewhere and just look at it for years, because that's what I do now. I still buy books like I'm an avid reader, and then I just stare at them for a while and buy more books, and they move to the bottom of the pile.
Nice hobby.
It's one of those shows that seems to be right up my alley. So I'm really excited to dive in. I will probably watch at least another one after the recording of this.
Oh, cool.
It'll be late for me. I'm just that excited about checking in on it. Everything about it seems very much my shit, so to speak.
It really is like complex storytelling that you just don't expect to see on television because it tends to need to dumb things down. This thing keeps going at a really high level. It's really rewarding.
Nice. Well, talking about something really rewarding that you watched is a good transition into something that I watched, because I also watched it. That's the only comparison the two of them have.
Okay.
But now I would like to say that I watched this to tie into today's episode because Charlize Theron is the star of both. But I honestly didn't realize that until you asked me what tied them together. So I watched Bombshell, the retelling of the Megyn Kelly era of Fox News and the sexual harassment scandals that shook the network and caused Roger Ailes to be let go. And there's a lot going on in this movie. A lot of people are doing a lot of interesting voices and wearing a lot of prosthetics and makeup to make them look exactly like the people they're supposed to be. And it feels like they did that. And then somebody was like, what's the movie going to be about? And then they were like, well, everyone's going to be wearing a lot of prosthetics and makeup and doing a lot of voices so they look and sound exactly like the people they're supposed to be. So that's where they started with the idea and where it kind of ended. I'm not sure what the movie is trying to say. Like, it's obviously a very upsetting story. Roger Ailes was clearly a terrible person and fostered this horrible atmosphere at Fox News, sexual harassment and sexual abuse. And that's a story that deserves to be told. But I feel like the movie, its aim was all over the place and it didn't end up landing on anything. So it's just like a retelling of greatest hits events that we all remember from the recent news, and then just having actors that kind of look like the people they're portraying just retell those stories.
It's just like a really high level, super expensive reenactment show.
Yeah, Unsolved Mysteries or whatever, but with $60 million for some reason. The one thing I wanted to point out is that John Lithgow plays Roger Ailes. John Lithgow, great actor.
Sure.
He is wearing so many prosthetics that I know Roger Ailes, people behind his back called him Jabba the Hutt, but he literally looks like Jabba the Hutt, but he's not doing a voice at all. So it just sounds like John Lithgow's voice coming out of this monster. This clay golem.
Shades of I think you should leave. Like, I don't even want to be around. What does he say?
I got all this shit on me, man. I don't even want to be around anymore. It's very much that. It was just very distracting having an unaltered John Lithgow voicing this. He looks like a puppet. That's how much shit he's wearing.
That's weird.
Like,
yeah.
He almost looks CGI. I'll see if I could put a fucking picture of him in the show notes.
Now I might have to check out this movie.
I can't really recommend it. It's got good performances. I particularly liked Margot Robbie. She gives a very affecting performance. But at the end of the day, I'm still not sure what the movie is trying to say or wants us to feel. But it did bomb, no pun intended, with the title Bombshell. It didn't even double its budget. Had a $32 million budget, made $61 million. So it's on the precipice of being a bomb. But I think if we really wanted to cover it, we could.
At some point, yeah, we might have to dig down into the makeup and the prosthetics and figure out what really happened.
What the fuck is going on with this movie? But so that's what we watched, besides Reindeer Games. But Reindeer Games, a movie that for as long as I've heard of it has been a punchline. if you remember Role Models, a movie that I've weirdly talked about on this podcast a few times already. It keeps coming up. Oh, because with Sean William Scott, we were talking about him.
Yeah.
But there's a line in that movie. Hold on, let me pull up. So there's a young man, Ronnie, in the movie who is being mentored by Paul Rudd, and he keeps calling him Ben Affleck. And there's a famous line that's "Suck at Reindeer Games" from that movie. And my main relationship to the movie Reindeer Games was that line.
Oh, okay.
So maybe we could play it in.
Suck it, Reindeer Games.
But what was your relationship with Reindeer Games? Had you seen it? Had you heard of it? What was your familiarity with it?
I don't think I'd seen it, but I do believe this was the time when I first became aware of Charlize Theron, probably just due to the fact that she gets sexy in it. And I was a young man at a time where it was a big piece of information to find out that you could see Charlize in this film, and she's very lovely in it. But apart from knowing that about it, I knew it was a Ben Affleck movie, and I knew there was something about a heist, and that was about it. So I feel like I was able to go into this pretty fresh.
Yeah, talking about Station 11 and things that are very much in our wheelhouse. This is a neo-noir heist thriller with a good cast and a very respected director, and serious movie for adults that doesn't really get made as much anymore, as people are eager to point out. Like, they just don't make movies like this anymore. And they really don't. There's not a lot of Reindeer Games being made today. So I really wanted to like this movie because it's got a lot going for it. I had never seen it up to this point, like I mentioned, but I can't quite give it the thumbs up. Yeah. I don't exactly give it a thumbs down. It's not terrible, but it's like a sideways thumb is the best I could do, like Zangief in Street Fighter. That's where I'm going.
I was thinking the same thing. To use a seasonal metaphor, this movie is not a lump of coal in your stocking, but it's not a PS5. So it's somewhere in between. It's like you go, oh, thanks, John Frankenheimer. What a nice Christmas gift. Thanks, buddy.
It's maybe a step up. You know what? I hate when people say socks are a bad gift because I love a pair of socks, like a nice new pair of socks. So I wouldn't call it socks, but it's like a sweater you'll wear once, never again. For doing gift metaphors, that's where I'm going with Reindeer Games.
That's fair. My other metaphor is that it is 3/4 baked. It's not a half-baked movie. It's better than that. But it's loose and sloppy in ways that kind of just keep throwing you off the trail of really digging it. So we'll have to explore exactly where we think it falls apart.
I have some thoughts on that, so I am more than ready to dive in. Should I get into the making of this movie and how it came together?
Yeah, let's hear how this thing happened.
All right. John Frankenheimer had a long and storied career in Hollywood, but not one that saw him have a ton of box office smash hits. Respected by critics, peers, and actors, Frankenheimer had a string of financial flops when he was tapped to make Reindeer Games, a neo-noir heist thriller starring Ben Affleck and Charlize Theron. Affleck was one of the hot commodities in Hollywood at the time. He was handsome, charming, reasonably talented, and was coming off a string of hits. Theron was getting a lot of work in high-profile films, but they weren't always of the highest quality, with movies like The Astronaut's Wife and Mighty Joe Young failing both commercially and critically.
I didn't know Mighty Joe Young bombed. I heard it made Big Monkey.
Gary Sinise, Danny Trejo, Donald Logue, Clarence Williams III, Dennis Farina, and James Frain would round out the cast, and they set off for balmy British Columbia in March of 1999. Given a budget of $42 million, filming would wrap in June of the same year, and the film was set for the most obvious release date of all time, Christmas of 1999.
Y2K? More like Y2 hours.
Test screenings didn't go well, though, so the movie was sent back into post-production for additional editing and reshoots, and ended up being pushed back to February, which has traditionally been a dead zone for big Hollywood releases, and where studios would send the films they had the least faith in. Upon its release on February 25, 2000, the studio's doubts proved to be well-founded as critics hated the movie and audiences shared the sentiment. The movie opened in third place with just over $8 million, as the surprise hit crime drama/comedy The Whole Nine Yards likely stole a good chunk of the movie's thunder.
Well, at least we saw one successful robbery.
It would limp out of theaters with only $32.2 million in worldwide earnings, and would become a punchline often cited as the inciting incident that sent Ben Affleck's career into a tailspin. It would sadly be the last theatrical release for John Frankenheimer, as he would pass away on July 6, 2002, following a stroke due to complications from spinal surgery. Shout out to John Frankenheimer, my homie from Queens, raised in the same borough. Much respect, but this is not one of his best.
No, not one of his best. He had an incredibly long career, as you mentioned.
He directed the original Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
In 1962.
That is going way back. So this is a guy who created the look of not only a film of a certain era, but he was a huge television director before getting into film. And so he's had just a foundational guy in modern visual media. But
the sheer longevity of his career is just astounding when you look. His first film was released in 1957, which is just insane. And he was doing television directing in the early 50s. So much respect for him.
Yeah, well, we've got guys that are alive and around now still doing films at similar ages and with similar lengths of their careers, like Spielberg and Scorsese even.
Ridley Scott, in
Sure.
his 80s, he released 2 movies this year.
He's still a machine cranking out movies. I don't know if Frankenheimer was on that level, or maybe we would feel differently if we took a look at it in the year 2000.
I don't think Frankenheimer ever really rose to those heights. I think he was always considered a favorite among industry people. There was a quote from Charlize herself after this movie came out that she was like, I knew the movie wasn't very good, but I really wanted to work with John Frankenheimer. So I bit the bullet and did the movie just for the chance to work with him. Yeah. And I feel like that was a lot of, that's how he got these casts and these kind of budgets when he kept failing commercially. He kept getting chances because people just liked him and liked his movies and liked working with him, except for Val Kilmer.
Yeah, he seems to have a little more in common with like a Brian De Palma, who we just talked about recently, who's a person who had some signature movies, some films that established them as somebody important in Hollywood, but also did a bunch of hired gun work and took whatever projects they could at different stages in their career. This feels like that kind of thing for Frankenheimer. He definitely gives it some Frankenheimer flavor, but it's not a signature part of his career.
I don't think you can accuse him of really mailing it in at any point. Maybe The Island of Dr. Moreau, but I have not seen that movie recently enough to cast judgment on it. And that also was a movie he inherited and it was already into production. But, he made Ronin 2 years before this, which still holds up as a very good action heist movie, very much in this vein, a little more of a serious tone, but he was still capable of putting out bangers at that age. It wasn't like he lost his touch.
Ronin is very cool. Ronin has a cool thing that this movie doesn't have, as this movie has a comic element. And we'll get into it as part of what I think is problematic with this movie, is that the comic element and the thriller element just don't quite gel together and you're not sure which direction it's leaning. Ronin is very serious, right? It's just De Niro being grumpy the whole time.
It's real hard-boiled. He's basically playing his Neil McCauley character from Heat, just in a slightly different movie. No nonsense for sure. But Frankenheimer, hold on, let me pull up what his previous movies were. Actually, it was The Island of Dr. Moreau and then Ronin and then Reindeer Games. So there was nothing else.
And that was it.
In between those 3. And then he had Silo 3 Jane, a movie I've never even heard of, and Year of the Gun in 1991 and The Fourth War in 1990. So his 90s, none of those movies were financially successful. So this movie does have a weird tone. I would like to get into it because I have a lot of thoughts about it. So do you want to walk us through the first leg of the story?
Yeah, let's jump on in. It's almost Christmas, and Rudy Duncan, played by Ben Affleck, is finishing up a prison sentence for car theft with not much to look forward to on the outside. His cellmate and buddy, Nick, played by James Frain, is about to get out too. Nick is stoked because he's about to meet Ashley, the girl he's fallen deeply in love with through the letters they've exchanged. Sadly, Nick is stabbed and dies just before his release date. Rudy is heartbroken, but when he spots Ashley, played by Charlize Theron, waiting alone at the prison, he decides to impersonate his dead friend and he tells her he's Nick. The two consummate their love and settle into a motel for a week of holiday bliss together. But Ashley and fake Nick's fun is shattered when a gang of thugs led by Gabriel Monster Mercer, played by Gary Sinise, crashes their motel room. Monster, as it turns out, is Ashley's brother, and he knows that Nick used to work security at a casino. Now he demands Nick's help to rob that casino on Christmas Eve.
A lot going on there. So I do want to point out, just for transparency, that I only watched the director's cut of the movie. It was the only one I could find. I don't have I think you said Showtime had the original theatrical cut on it.
Yeah, I think it may have only popped onto Showtime recently. I didn't notice it at first. So I watched the director's cut too that you had found. And then on a rewatch, I watched most of the theatrical. But unlike in other cases where I tried to do this work very meticulously, I didn't spot the differences. I spotted one, and we'll talk about it when that scene comes up. But there's 20 minutes, a movie missing, and I didn't miss it. So I'm not exactly sure what I did or didn't miss.
So it might not be one of those situations. Like with Kingdom of Heaven, the Ridley Scott film, everyone's like, oh, the director's cut is a totally different movie. It improves on it in every way. This is not one of those situations.
And not as far as I could tell. I didn't feel like there was something that I missed in the shorter one.
So I dig the intro here. We open to just a bunch of dead Santas in the snow, smoking, smoldering corpses, some killed in pretty gruesome ways.
That's fun. That's a great way to start a crime thriller. Show the end and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck happened? I got to see this.
And the Christmas hook is good. It's a fun little angle to put on the traditional bank robbery heist type movie. It gives it another little flavor. You could argue the movie doesn't quite do enough with it. And other points, it kind of shoehorns it in awkward ways. But I think in the intro, at least, I was like, okay, this is cool. I like where they're bringing this.
Yeah, cool points for sure at the top.
But then we get to prison, and I got a lot of problems with the prison sequence of this movie.
Yeah.
First off, these fucking guys happen to be cellmates and best friends, and they just happen to be getting released on the exact same day is too much of a coincidence to ignore.
Yeah, you have to just buy that. I think I didn't even question it at first, but then in going back and trying to summarize what happened in this movie, I'm like, that's weird. Why are they so friendly? And how come they got the same dates? But, I've never been to prison, so.
Plead the fifth, but I could understand them getting close if they were cellmates. That's totally believable. I mean, it's like a common trope, crime movies that have sequences take place in prison. One of our most popular episodes is The Shawshank Redemption.
Sure.
Like prison best friends, not a concept we're not familiar with. But the release dates being the same is just strange. That was one thing too many. I guess it is necessary for the central conceit of the movie, which is this whole mistaken identity plot. But that plot I have problems with too, which we'll get into in a little bit. The fight scene in the cafeteria, those roaches were enormous and numerous. How did all these guys start eating them before they realized what they put in their mouth?
Okay, we should explain.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the cafeteria is serving some kind of parfait, Jello gelatin, and you don't see them. First, the character, which one is it, Nick or Rudy? One of them complains, gets mad at
Nick.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Nick. And he brags about how he's getting out of jail in 3 days, and you'll still be serving cafeteria food.
Okay,
blah, blah. Which seems like a smart thing to do. Anger the maximum security prisoners that you're locked up with and flaunt how you're getting out of jail real soon. Good way to go about life.
Yeah, it immediately turns bad for him. But then everyone gets their meal and sits down and starts eating their Jello and finds that there's roaches in the Jello.
Well, one prominent prisoner discovers the monsters and the gelatin, as he calls them.
Okay.
Did you catch who this was, this actor?
Was that Isaac Hayes?
Isaac Hayes playing Zook. Yeah, Shaft himself, or Chef, depending on how old you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the prisoner here. And you'd think he'd have more of a role, but no, he just gets mad about the Jello and freaks out and causes a riot.
He plays a kind of a kooky guy, right? Because he's not a regular guy who had it up to here. He freaks out in this screaming break with reality about the monsters, as you said. And
everything he's screaming is they're monstrous roaches. Yeah, like I said, monstrous to the point where it's implausible that you would pick up a scoop of Jello with your spoon and not notice this fucking thing. I can't stress to you how large these are.
Yeah, they're bigger than tablespoon size. They do not fit on your spoon.
Also, no one happened to bite them. They're all just pulling them out of their mouth whole, which it's just like another weird thing. So you just put the Jello in your mouth and let it sit there. And then you're like, oh, wait, something's not right here. I don't know.
It's like there's some clumsy writing.
I'm not saying I wanted shots of people pulling out half a roach that they
realistic.
did.
Yes. It was played up for the camera, I guess. And it created this artificial drama of, okay, what would it take for a prison riot to break out? It's an interesting question from the perspective of a screenwriter. Okay, we need a prison riot to break out. How could that happen? And it's like, okay, giant roaches.
About roaches. The prop guy took the assignment way too seriously and got the biggest roaches anyone's ever heard of. These are like the fear factor roaches that you have to sit in the case with.
Exactly. It worked. But it does make you wonder, like, what is this movie that we're watching? Is that supposed to be funny? Is it supposed to be horrifying? Is it supposed to be gritty and real? Or is this supposed to be zany, over the top version of what happens in prisons? And it's not really clear.
The answer is it varies depending on the scene and what act of the movie we're in. But we should also note how Nick dies. So there is a gigantic prisoner named Alamo, because I assume you'll never be able to forget him. He is out to get Rudy because he thinks Rudy snitched on him and got him sent to solitary. So this enormous prisoner, Alamo, played by current federal prisoner Dana Stubblefield, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, uses this riot that breaks out as an opportunity to get at Rudy. Nick gets in the way and gets killed. Worth pointing out just because, I don't know if it's camera tricks, because Dana Stubblefield is 6'2" in real life. Isn't Ben Affleck like 6'2"?
Yeah, I thought he's rather tall. But Alamo looks gigantic throughout this.
That is some Lord of the Rings level perspective work. He looks like he's about 8 feet tall. But yeah, if you just Google why Dana Stubblefield's in jail, he's not a good person. So no praise for his role in this movie.
But yeah, to your point, that's another artificial part in that scene is like a literal riot breaks out. And these guys are like, oh shit, we're about to get out of jail. We can't get fucked up in this prison riot. But they don't really take shelter. They don't head for a corner or put their backs against a wall and hold off the worst of it. They just sit there in the middle of the room talking to each other, like facing each other.
Just talking each other through it, man. I made a note when they first sat down. I was like, why is Rudy sitting with his back to Alamo Alamo, this guy who clearly wants to kill him because he just keeps walking up to him and standing there ominously.
Oh, yeah, he's made it clear.
And now you're going to sit with your back to him. That's just prison 101. Don't you learn that on day one? Like, if somebody wants to kill you, you probably want to watch them at all times. And I think the roach scene would have worked better if it was orchestrated by Alamo to create confusion enough to get to Nick and Rudy. But they never go down that route.
That would have been a smarter way. They actually have to explain it at the end that like, oh, we planned something that was not going to go that way and that happened by chance. That doesn't make sense right now until we spoil the big twists at the end of the movie. But anyway, this whole thing this seems like a bad way to set up the fact that your main character, your hero, is going to be Rudy, and his thing is that he's plucky, he's clever, he survives in the toughest of situations because of his ability to think on his feet and react to situations. And yet the first thing you see him do is sit like a dummy and almost get stabbed.
So Nick's dead, as far as we know, wink, wink. But I did want to point out the prison guard that taunts Rudy through his bars about, oh, your buddy's dead. Fuck you, man, who we never see again. So there's really no reason for him to be doing this except to show that prison sucks, I guess. Mark Atchison, who played a mean prison guard in Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh,
past
okay.
episode. Go check that out. Nice little combo. Also, he's the mailroom friend that Buddy the Elf meets in Elf. So then our hero, Rudy, is a real piece of shit. He gets out of prison, sees Charlize Theron there, and he's like, I bet I could have sex with her if I lie to her a lot. So that's what he does. He's just horny. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
This is the guy we're supposed to root for? That's pretty
It's pretty
sleazy.
shitty. It's bad. And not just for the fact to deceive a woman to try to have sex with her, but we were supposed to believe that Nick was his best buddy. Like they really cared for each other. And now this woman that Nick loved and that loved Nick, he's not even telling her that Nick died. So it's not, It's bad in every single way you can think of.
And I don't want to like speculate about pickup artist nonsense, but if he walked up to him like, hey, I'm Rudy, Nick was my cellmate and my best friend. I know you guys had a correspondence and you had plans to meet, but sadly, he tragically died the other day, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go get a cup of coffee and talk about it? You know, like you might be able to start a relationship that way without having this whole layer of lies on top of it. Like that's a pretty reasonable way to approach somebody. Tell them the love of their life, as far as you know, just got murdered. And then you don't have all this extra baggage of having to pretend to be Nick on top of it.
Yeah, but then you don't have this fucking crazy movie.
That's the thing. Everything in this is like, yeah, but if we do that, then there's no movie. And it's like, well, then your writing is bad. You know, like the screenplay is not good if you need to keep making those concessions to have the movie make sense.
That's definitely a sign that you're just doing things to make the plot happen that you need to happen. And one of the clues is like when he's looking at her and he's trying to decide, or he gets on the prison bus, he's going to go home, he's going to leave her there and just forget about it. And then he's sitting there and then they do a voiceover of him going, Rudy, don't do this. You shouldn't do it. And to me, to have the character telling himself that was a clue that the writer was telling themselves that, like, this doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we felt watching it.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that there's a lot of contrivances being made. Contrivances being made in this movie for plot's sake and to keep the story moving. But sadly, we're not even through 10% of them.
Yeah. No, and that's another part of this, not to keep going on this part of the movie. It's long. This whole prison scene, it was just scene after scene of establishing the same thing. Nick and Rudy are buddies. Nick and Rudy are getting out soon. Nick has a girlfriend. Like, you could have done this in 2 scenes and gotten out of there fast, but it was like 20 minutes a movie.
At least in the director's cut, I can't speak to the theatrical cut, but prison is a big chunk of this movie. Yeah, and it's a pretty gray, ugly prison. It's not like a fun place to spend a ton of time. The whole movie's pretty gray and drab, which I guess fits like the middle of nowhere in Michigan wintertime vibe, but it doesn't necessarily make it fun.
Yeah, we just talked about a Semi-Pro, which cast Flint, Michigan. That painted this attractive version of Michigan, and this paints just the most dismal, cold, wet version you could think of.
Fun times watching that for 2 hours. So, and then there's the coffee shop scene where these 2 people are trying to figure each other out and establish what their relationship's going to be. You pointed this out. They're literally like 2 of the most beautiful people in the world. And they're just sitting there like, I was worried you wouldn't like me.
Yeah, that's their whole thing. Both of them are trying to explain to each other why they didn't connect right away out in front of the prison in the snow. And she's like, I thought you would reject me. And he's like, I didn't think you'd like me. We're like, guys, take a look in the mirror. So it's another plot contrivance that sort of strains belief.
Oh, I said that word wrong before. You're going to have to cut that.
Well, just say contrivance and I'll cut it.
Contrivance.
Okay.
Contrivance. Contrivance. I gave you 3 takes there, so you can cut in the one that fits the worst so that we can keep this part in later, and then it'll be a joke. Contrivance.
Okay.
Contrivance.
I like that.
Contrivance. And then, of course, they go to the motel, and they're fucking like rabbits.
Yeah.
And having a grand old time, and Charlize buys him a fancy coat, and they go back to the motel, and boom, we're hit with the supporting character actors of the mid-90s to mid-2000s, like Murderers Row.
They all rush into their, all of a sudden, all these guys are piling into their little tiny motel room.
We got Gary Sinise looking like Lieutenant Dan, but with legs.
Yep.
Like he's doing the same exact facial hair and everything. Also, jacked in this movie. Did you see his arms?
He's pretty big. This
Gary.
is the biggest. I've not seen Gary Sinise this big before.
Good for him, man. I didn't know he had it in him. He was always like a wiry guy, but he's got some muscle on. Clarence Williams III, long storied actor who will forever be known to me from Half-Baked as the main villain of Half-Baked. Just a fantastic role if you guys haven't seen him. We got Donald Logue, who I'm a big Donald Logue fan. We talked about him before. He was great in Zodiac and that show Terriers that I talked about a couple weeks ago. He's the main star of it. That's his show. So, and interesting thing about his role, Pug, was originally Vin Diesel.
Oh, yes.
He left the project over creative differences with Frankenheimer and also to star in Fast and the Furious.
Oh, okay.
And it went to Donald Logue. Like, at what point are those two in a casting call for the same characters?
Yeah, I wonder if the part was the same because it fit Donald Logue perfectly. He was the sympathetic one of the crew. That's most of them are pretty evil and dastardly, and he's kind of like the reasonable one and the one that you hate to see meet a bad end.
I guess most of his character development is just he's an alcoholic, I guess, and maybe a little simple.
Okay.
That's kind of what I got from him. Do you agree?
I don't know. I guess I didn't take that away. I thought he was just nice. That was what I took away. Like, he's the nice one in the crew, but maybe he is a little simple. I don't know.
He's definitely the nicest, but you could be simple and nice.
Sure.
It's okay. But definitely a heavy drinker. He's always talking about going to get a drink, and he wants a drink, and he's always got a bottle of something with him, so which comes into play. Also, Danny Trejo. We can't forget about Danny.
Yeah. Still pretty young at this stage. Danny Trejo is solid. He does what you want him to do, which is be intimidating and punch a guy in the face once in a while.
I did like his whole monologue about Christmas too, that the retail industry does 50% of your business between December 1st and December 25th. So
I forgot that.
He gives this whole monologue about how if a nation really wanted to grow their retail industry, they should have a second big consumer holiday in May or June called Christmas 2.
I forgot that out of nowhere because the rest of the time he's just a tough guy, Danny Trejo muscle character.
Right.
This movie has these weird things because we were about to talk about Clarence Williams. For most of the movie, he's the weird one in the crew who says weird things and is kind of on a different plane. But I forgot that they threw Danny Trejo one of those too. So they're just all over the place.
Yeah, Gary Sinise is a line like, ever since you started taking night classes, you give me a headache or something like that. They just never bring it up again.
I know. It should be funny. That's the thing. That's one of these things in this movie. There's all these things that when you look at them, like, oh, that's written as a big punchline. This movie should be wickedly funny and, obviously dangerous too. The monster character has to be scary the whole time. But these moments should really lighten things up. And I feel like the Clarence Williams moments do lighten things up. They work, but a lot of other moments that are written for comedy kind of play straight, or at least felt to me straight. So this is another thing where that whole Danny Trejo scene, it went over my head. I
think if you want to see a movie that is very much in this vein, but does work and has the comedic elements while still being scary when it needs to and having stakes, Out of Sight is a clear parallel to this one, and both have Dennis Farina in prominent roles. But I think this movie feels like it's trying to be like almost like an Elmore Leonard story, but it's a little too alternatively mean-spirited and just not funny enough.
Yeah.
But Out of Sight, which came out, close to this one, I feel like hits all the beats this movie is trying to hit and missing.
Yeah, I remember loving that movie, and I haven't seen it in 20 years, so
it's fucking
really
fantastic. It holds up just as well as it did the first time you watched it, I'm certain. I watched it like a year ago. And loved
cool.
it. Actually, for Silver Screen Video, I was on that podcast and talked about it. It wasn't even a year ago. Good podcast. Check it out.
Check it out.
Fans of theirs. As you mentioned, Clarence Williams, he might be in a different movie entirely. He's got like a Lynchian bad guy vibe to him, just like all kinds of idiosyncrasies going on here. I did laugh at they got a shitload of cookies going through like their groceries.
They're kidnapping them out of the motel room and he's eating cookies from their bags of groceries on the floor. See, like that's where it did work because he delivers it so strongly. I was like, okay, I have permission to laugh at that because I know that's supposed to be funny and it was funny. And then his other bit, his recurring bit is he keeps talking about Santa's dwarves and people keep correcting them that Santa has elves. and that's charming and funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Clarence Williams, he goes for it in every role I've ever seen him in, but I've never seen him really miss the the mark. So he's definitely going for it. And for the most part, it's working.
Yeah, as much as this movie stays afloat, he has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so you want to move on to the next leg of the story?
Yeah, let's guide the sleigh forward.
All right, so kidnapped by the gang, Rudy tries to tell Monster that he's not Nick. But when he realizes they'll kill him if he can't help them, he changes his tune and says he is Nick after all. He tells Monster the casino was recently remodeled, and for that reason, he'll need to go inside in disguise to scope it out. At the casino, the gang realizes Rudy was lying about the remodel. Rudy tries to run away, but Monster catches him and brings him back to a motel where he shackles and tortures him and forces him to draw a map of the casino back rooms. While at the motel, Rudy eavesdrops and finds out that Ashley isn't really Monster's sister, but his girlfriend, and she's been playing Rudy this whole time. But Rudy doesn't let on that he knows. He continues to cooperate and even convinces Monster to let him be part of the crew for the heist. So there's our first big twist.
That twist worked on me. Did that work for you? Was that like a satisfying?
Yeah, it was fine. That was like,
twist?
As far as twists go, that was fine. I don't think that the movie pays that twist off very well. It works in the moment, but I don't think what the movie does with it is very interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Because later on, Charlize reveals herself to Rudy and gives a big speech, but it's like, Rudy already knows this. We already know this. It feels like a waste of time, you know? Who are you monologuing for? Nobody's shocked at this thing. You know, when she drives the car into the casino in the third act.
Yeah, it's unsatisfying what happens after. You captured it perfectly. It's satisfying in the moment, but then because of the way the plot unfolds, she has to keep playing both sides, like still kissing up to Rudy, but he knows.
And it turns out to be three sides.
And it's, and there's even more sides that you never saw coming, and maybe you would have been fine if it never did come. But yeah, it doesn't roll downhill from there. It keeps pushing the rock left and right. And
horizontally,
sliding around. It's all this effort in moving the plot forward, including that part about, okay, you got to help me convince Monster to let me on the crew because I'm really with you and I've got to be in the casino. And then she's literally helping Rudy, but not for the reasons he thinks. It gets really convoluted, and it's all just to make the scene happen that you know has to happen, which is all of them going into the casino at the end.
Exactly. It's more just plot mechanics disguised as plot. There's a lot of exposition in this movie, which I feel like is the sign of a weak screenplay. I do put a lot of the fault with this movie on the screenplay as opposed to the direction, and that might have something to do with the screenwriter's other credits and just my general feeling towards those films, but we'll get into that a little later.
So one part that I thought worked in this section, or at least there was some pleasure in it, was getting in disguise to go scope out the casino, and they dress up Ben Affleck in a ridiculous cowboy costume with bright red stuff up and down the lapels of his jacket.
Yep.
And that was good for a laugh. And that was a point where you knew it was supposed to be funny. He was getting humiliated in a weird way, even as he thought he was getting over on the gang.
And he almost did. He came close to getting away. It was a smart plan, good enough plan. Did you catch the kid that he pays to wear his outfit? And I know you did because I could see your notes, but I want you to tell the listeners.
I didn't until I read it. So yeah, he goes in this funny outfit, and he decides he's going to try to make a run for it. And he sees this kid with a similar goatee in the bathroom. And he's like, I give you $100, put on my stupid cowboy outfit. It's a kid that he throws him up against the wall for 2 seconds. And I didn't know until I read later that was Ashton Kutcher.
You get more of it, I read, in the theatrical cut. Interestingly, you get the Clarence Williams character questioning him for a second. And he's like, oh, he just paid me to wear it. But yeah, his first movie role, it was Ashton Kutcher.
Wasn't he already doing that 70s show at the time?
Yeah, he was already on TV. So he was a known commodity. It seems like he was doing this just as a gag.
Kind of a gag thing. Mostly when you see him, first he's got the goatee on, and then I guess they rough him up in the car for a minute when they catch him running away from them. But then he's wearing a hat and sunglasses and the goatee, and it's not a lot of Kutcher
they're not
joy.
Yeah, they're not advertising the Kutcherness of it all.
No, they're not.
Because it probably wasn't much of a draw at the time.
Guess not. It was just a stunt for somebody's benefit. Guess not us.
Whose? I can't say. But I did want to say, Rudy, he's a man who loves his hot chocolate. He was talking about it for quite a while. He finally gets it.
Yes.
And I thought that was a nice little hero's journey. He went on to get his hot chocolate and pecan pie.
Also felt really forced. Like all of a sudden he's like, okay, I am Nick. Guess what? I was saying I'm not Nick, but I am Nick. Of course I'm Nick. But if you want my help, you better fucking give me my hot chocolate. And then he becomes all indignant and in control and just lording it over the crew. Like, no one talks to me until I finish eating every piece of my pie. And I'm eating it with my fingers for some reason instead of my fork. It doesn't even make sense.
Eating it like a fucking deviant. I was uncomfortable watching him eat this pie.
It was weird.
And then he asked for onion rings? How are you going to follow a pie with onion rings? That's the wrong order.
Yes, and he deserved it. At that point, Danny Trejo punches him in the nose, and you're like, yeah, fuck you, Affleck. You pushed it too far.
Sidebar, though, I got to know, as a West Coaster, Are you a pecan or pecan guy?
Okay, I grew up saying pecan because that's all I heard. And then at some point in my 20s, I worked with a gentleman from Kentucky who schooled everyone in the office and said, "You idiots, it's pecan," and stop saying pecan. So at that point, I tried to stop.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot some guy from Kentucky is the fucking authority on pronunciation and everything. So I'm a pecan man, and I'm going to be a pecan man until I'm dead in the ground. Kiss my ass, Kentucky guy. I'm sorry. I'm sure he was a nice guy, but I'm firmly in the pecan camp.
I revert to pecan, but when I'm trying to be cultured, I say pecan.
That's my secret. I never try to be cultured.
It's a good plans, good life strategy.
All right. So we have to talk about the dart scene because that dart scene was a lightning rod when it came out. Test audiences famously hated this scene. And I think
painful.
They might have had trouble getting an R rating on it too because of the scene.
Okay.
It's pretty explicit torture. It's not bloody or gory in any way because darts don't they're darts.
Yeah.
I've seen people drunk in bars get like a dart in the hand or the arm or whatever trying to show off or be an idiot or something.
Yeah, we've seen worse torture in your James Bond and Lethal Weapon type of scenarios where it's like raw skin. Affleck's still wearing a shirt and a sweater or something. Like the darts are going through multiple layers of clothing. You're not seeing the violence that's happening to him, except that there's a dart sticking out of his shoulder.
Is it just like the cruelty of it that made it? I don't know. I didn't find this scene like all that upsetting. Maybe because Rudy's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, you're okay with him sometimes getting a comeuppance. And the whole scene is weird. Monster is being a monster in the scene, right? This is where he proves that he's devious, but he leads off with a really dry, boring speech about like how much time he put in as a long haul truck driver and just how boring and grueling that work is and how he deserves better. And you're like, okay, this is
braver than the troops our truckers are.
Yeah. It's just
like I have nothing against truckers. It is a hard job and it's a boring job, but it's not the kind of thing where you expect people to give you sympathy because that's your job. Like you picked it, man. You had to get a CDL.
Yeah. Or to believe that this life turned you into this evil monster that he had become. He earned the name Monster because he drove a truck and that drove him mad. He took out his anger on
Skull
car
Crusher
thieves.
over there. He's been stocking shelves in this grocery store for decades. He's fucking crazy.
Don't fuck with them. Yeah, so it was a weird juxtaposition, but it's staged like the big villain speech scene. This is why I am a madman who will do anything to get my money, my reward, including throwing these darts at you. And then he chucks the darts at him. And Ben Affleck does a lot of screaming in pain in this movie. He sells it in many of the scenes. Like he doesn't do the hero thing where you get punched in the gut and just go oof and bend over and wince. He is moaning and groaning every time someone touches him.
He's doing some real physical acting. Yeah. Yeah. But again, this points to problems with the screenplay for me, that this whole monologue is built on this kind of false pretense about the job of trucking being such a hard scrabble existence that everything that comes after it, it's a house of cards and it all crumbles because none of it has any like real world grounding.
And then it ends with chucking a bunch of darts into him. And I think this is one place where, like you said, this was hard to get into the movie. It seemed that there were 2 darts in the theatrical cut that I watched, and then the scene cuts away. And if I recall, did he throw 5 darts into him in the longer cut?
Yeah, there's a bunch. Yeah, he gets hit with quite a few darts.
Yeah, it's like turning around and getting some in the back. I don't know. Yeah, it's unpleasant. It's drawn out. And then they deal with the aftermath.
Yeah, Charlize nurses him back to health from his dart incident.
Yeah, she's like, oh my God, what happened to you? Dart holes and little spots of blood on your shirt? This is awful.
If there's any doctors, like trauma surgeons or whatever, listening to the podcast, like, could a dart thrown in the right spot, and I don't mean hitting you in the neck because I think it could kill you then, but if you threw a dart at a man's chest, could it kill him if it hit him in the right spot?
Good question.
Hit us up in the comments of the or on our Twitter or email, because I'm very curious. How much danger was he really in here? Because it seems like Monster's pretty good at darts. I assume you get good at darts, driving a truck, because truck stops will have saloons or roadhouses with a dartboard on them.
I didn't connect that, but that makes perfect sense.
So his aim was true, I would say, because the first 4 darts he throws make a perfect square around Rudy's head, and then he starts throwing them at his body.
Right.
So I'm curious. Could he have killed him in that scene if one was just an inch to the left or the right where the heart is or something?
Man.
How much danger was he in?
What are the odds that some of our Blastoids fans are medical experts that can answer this? Even, let's put it this way, even if you're not a medical expert, chime in, weigh in.
Yeah, let's have some discourse about it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Let's
just find out what's going on here. How much danger was Rudy really in? All right, so then the big reveal that Ashley and Monster are not brother and sister, but are actually lovers, happens in a motel pool, which they proceed to have sex in, which is fucking gross.
It's bad for all kind of reasons. This motel is weird in the first place.
I can't make sense of this motel.
It's some kind of medieval times themed motel. The walls are all faux stone and there's archways and shields on the wall. and there's nobody in the pool.
Let's go over what's wrong with this motel. They keep talking about it like it's a shitbag motel. And this motel sucks, but it has a beautiful indoor pool, a sauna. It has room service because we see Clarence Williams' character taking room service that's partially finished and eating it.
Yep.
It has a mini bar apparently because they get mad at Rudy for racking up a bunch of charges on their mini bar. In the year 2000, it has these reasonably high-tech door openers that seem electronic in nature and not like your typical key on a little shoddy keychain with your room number on it.
Oh, yeah. It's not just a ratty old key. It's the full key card scenario.
I feel like in the middle of nowhere, Michigan, this is the fucking Four Seasons as far as they're concerned. Like, this motel kind of rules.
Let's not forget the game room. The dart scene goes on in the rec room of the motel, which is similarly faux castle rock wall paneled. It's got some video games that they have to throw some local kids out of the room. There's a lot going on in this motel. This is like a
I'm not even sure it's faux rock wall. That might be a real rock wall for all we know. They pulled out all the stops when building this thing.
This is a real castle.
It is luxury at its finest. So, yeah, I'm just tired of this narrative that this motel sucks and is just terrible because we have no evidence that supports that. Even the windows open.
Yeah.
When's the last time you've been in a motel with windows that open?
Well, you know what? The last time I wrote a script where I needed my hero to jump out the window, lo and behold, that's how the motel worked.
Was there a restaurant attached to it too? I think there was, right? Is that where they eat the pie?
There's a bar. They're like, let's go to the bar.
Right.
This is a fucking deluxe motel. We're going to look this up.
Yeah.
One day we're going to do a blast zone vacation to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and just all chill out in this game room at this awesome resort motel.
We're going to do a live episode and we're going to fucking film it in the game room of this motel.
Just throwing darts at each other and recording live podcasts.
Why the hell not? But I did, it's like a fucking Three Stooges event when Rudy is trying to get out of the motel to escape. And just by pure coincidence, every exit of this motel is blocked by one of the henchmen.
Yeah.
Like one just like reading a magazine in a doorway and like, like it's just another example of, well, he can't get out of the motel because then the movie would be over because he knows how to hotwire cars. So how do we keep him in this hotel?
Yeah, not only do they one of the bad guys stumbles up to every door that he's trying to go through, but he manages to break into someone else's pickup truck that's in the parking lot. He sees a gun club sticker on the pickup truck. He's like, oh, there's probably a gun in that truck. I'm going to break into it, pick up with a shell. And he's inside that. And for some reason, Clarence Williams decides that he needs to walk up to the window of this truck of somebody that he doesn't know and go in there. And that scares Affleck out. Like they're basically chasing him at a fevered pitch without realizing that he's there. And he's dodging.
I hate it. I hate it. It's just, it doesn't make sense. The movie is not following any kind of logic. It's just bad screenplay.
And while we're hating this scene, so he's chased up one stairwell by one guy. He tries to go down the other stairwell. Oh my God, he's going to get out. He's going to go down the stairwell and he's going to be gone. And nope, Danny Trejo's coming up that stairwell. So he comes back up and then is in the little stairwell lobby with a vending machine. And instead of hiding behind the door next to the vending machine where Danny Trejo would just walk right past him and he could then slip out of the hotel, he's like, no, I must run down the hallway, pounding down the halls and break back into my room. It's just...
Which he just stabs the electronic part of the key card reader and it magically works to open the door. But yeah, if you just stood by the door behind like a garbage can or something, he could have snuck out and he probably would have had a minute.
Because Trejo wasn't chasing him. Trejo was just chilling and just minding his own business, ambling back to the room. He actually ambles past that doorway a moment later. So if Affleck had been hiding behind it, he would have never been spotted. But yeah, and then he gets to the key card because he doesn't have the card, obviously. And he mumbles to himself, well, I'm a car thief. I can break into things. I can hotwire things. And that is explaining why this is possible, even though it doesn't make sense why you would touch a knife to the inside of a key card reader and it would let you in.
It's like a MacGruber scene, disarming the nuclear warhead just by pulling out all the wires.
It's poking at it, yeah. Oh boy, we're not making this movie sound any better. Yeah. We were like, oh, we kind of like this movie, and all we're finding is things to shit on.
Well, so far we've said we like Clarence Williams and one scene from Danny Trejo and
2 if you count the face punch.
But we're going to get more Dennis Farina in the final act, so that's always a good thing.
Oh my God, hamming it up. Are we ready to move on?
I think so.
All right. So on Christmas Eve, the crew dresses up in Santa costumes and goes into the casino to do the robbery. Things get violent and several of the gang members are killed thanks to the bogus info that Rudy gave them about casino security. In a standoff with the casino manager, Monster learns for certain that Rudy is not Nick. Rudy escapes, but Monster and Ashley capture him.
I just can't believe, like, at this point in the movie, we're still fucking dealing with this plot point about whether Rudy is Nick. I'm sorry.
I'm not Rudy. I'm Rudy. I'm Nick. Anyway, now everyone knows he's Rudy. Rudy escapes, but Monster and Ashley capture him and prepare to send him off a cliff in a burning car as a sacrificial decoy to throw the cops off their trail. Then, in a twist, a big twist, Ashley shoots Monster dead, and the real Nick reappears. And it turns out that Ashley was actually the real Nick's girlfriend from before, and this whole thing from the start has been a long con to trick both Rudy and Monster into helping Nick and Ashley, whose name is not Ashley, score the casino money. But Rudy breaks free and he manages to send Nick and not Ashley over the cliff separately to their fiery deaths. He then walks off back to his hometown, leaving stacks of money in strangers' mailboxes along the way, finally arriving home in time for a happy Christmas dinner with his family.
I am changing my sideways thumb to a thumbs down, just like reading back through the fucking plot points of this movie. I think I would compare this movie to just like having a bunch of candy for dinner.
That's great.
You know, like once in a while you're like, nah, I don't feel like making myself dinner. I'm just going to eat a bag of chips and then have some garbage.
That
and
has
it tastes
a lot.
good. It tastes fine in the moment, but then like when you go back and think about it, like that was stupid. I should have had some vitamins. There's no nutritional value in anything I just ate. And even though it tasted okay.
I open these Reese's trees and I'm still hungry, so I guess I'll just keep eating till I'm full and to the
How
bottom
many
of the
Reese's
bag.
trees it takes me to get full, man? Like,
A lot, but it's fucking
terrible.
It's awesome. Most of that Reese's Trees journey or Reese's Eggs journey, if it is the springtime, is awesome. But when you actually get full on them, you don't feel so great about it.
Right. When you sit down and actually talk about this movie in a critical way, it fucking falls apart completely. And, you know, I love a heist. And the heist in this movie is pretty rinky-dink, but I feel like that's by design. They keep talking about how this casino fucking sucks and it's a shithole. And so it makes sense that the heist itself would be pretty low tech and just slapdash. So that's fine. I don't even mind that. I think the heist is good. The action's well shot. It's a lot of like pretty brutal gunplay.
Yeah.
People get shot in this movie. It looks like it hurts.
And that's where, I guess, if you feel like Frankenheimer is leaning in the dark, gritty direction the whole time, then you can embrace the scene and go, yeah, this is where it's really ugly. It's a nasty little casino, and it's a gang that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and they make a mess of it from the start, and people start getting shot and killed, and there's a lot of brutality in it. And the moment when the Donald Logue character that we like, he bites it because of something that Rudy told them that was a lie, that there's no guns in the count room.
In the counting room, yeah.
In the counting room, and as soon as they break the door open, he gets fucking gunned down with a triple shotgun blast, and it's brutal. That part's fun. We like that part. That's part of the genre payoff for a thriller heist movie, is that ugliness, and it delivers. It's entertaining.
But then at the same time, it's tonally clashes with the rest of the movie, which has been relatively like silly. I don't know.
And then it tries to go back to silly because Dennis Farina is the casino manager, and he plays mostly silly, even though he has some of the brutal violence to enact himself.
Right.
Like, he plays his character for laughs because all he keeps saying is, I can't go back to Vegas. Like, he's this caricature of a washed up casino manager.
We got to say his name, though. Fucking Jack Bang. Is that his name? Am I remembering that correctly?
Was it Bangs or?
Hold on. No,
Oh, yeah. Jack Bangs.
Jack Bangs is his name. It's a great fucking name. But also, that's the name of a character in the 70s exploitation movie. You know, like, it's not like in a gritty crime thriller that you're going to have your antagonist at this point in the movie. I don't know. I was kind of rooting for Farina to come out on top.
Yeah, Farina's likable because he's stuck in this thing.
Even though he's pretty
casino.
racist to the Native American owners of the casino early on.
That's true. I guess nobody's that
he's
likable.
not great either. No.
I'll say, buddy.
Justice for Pug. I guess he's the best character in the movie.
Yeah, poor Pug. He tried to help, and he actually does help. He supplies the rum that gets Rudy out of a bad spot.
So then Charlize drives a car through the front door and runs over a couple of, they're law enforcement in some capacity, right?
Some kind of, tribal law enforcement or something. Who knows what they are.
Some rangers maybe, but they've got guns. And then she gives her big speech to Rudy where she reveals who she really is and why she's doing this. It's like, man, we know this already. Like, we heard you say it in the pool to Monster.
Right.
Like, Rudy heard you say it to Monster in the pool, even though you didn't know he heard you say it. And now you're just telling us all again. She gives some kind of reasoning about, she came from a hard scrabble town and people from those towns, then, the cycle never ends of poverty, which, sure, I agree. But is this the time and the place to really be, talking about it?
No, I think you're right on. I actually forgot the speech happened. The speeches are so bad in this movie.
She's not good at when she's delivering it. It's some of her worst acting.
I guess you can't blame her. When you give an actor bad writing, there's only so much they can do with it. And it's meaningless. And like you said, it breaks a major rule of screenwriting is don't tell us the same information twice. Keep moving forward.
Right. She's basically trying to justify herself to Rudy in the scene while revealing who she really is. It's pretty flat and bad. Yeah, she's reading bad words. Not like swear words. Like the writing in the scene is bad. And clearly she tried to do something different with her acting and make it more sinister and a little more over the top. But it comes off like she's in a different movie for this section. Because she's been playing Ashley very Babe in the Woods the whole time.
Yeah, she's the innocent girl that was doing everything for love from the beginning and only helping her brother because it's her brother. And I believe that to drive the point home, they put some darker eyeliner in this scene. She pops out of the car and like, oh, now she's a villain because she has black eyeliner.
They should have given her a mustache, like a twirly mustache, just to be like, she's a bad guy now, or a little goatee or something. I don't know. I think that would have been funny.
Yes.
But what do I know? We got to talk about Merlin, which is, I don't think we've said his character's name, but that's the Clarence Williams character. His death. I had issues with this too, but you crystallized it pretty well. So he lights up a cigarette after he feels like he's triumphed over Rudy finally. And tell us how Rudy goes about dispatching him.
Yeah, so Rudy's been given this because Monster doesn't trust him. He's been given this squirt gun. Looks fairly realistic. Then the Donald Logue character offers him some rum earlier on. He's like, I'm going to put rum in my squirt gun because at least I can get drunk while I'm doing this miserable heist. Then in the end, there's been a big shootout. We see some guns on the floor. Rudy grabs a gun off the floor and he gets the jump on Merlin, except we see something dripping from the nozzle. Oh no, he picked up the squirt gun. Merlin knows it. I got you, you fucker. I can pick up the real gun, hold you hostage, and enjoy a cigarette before I finally dispatch you the way you deserve with a bullet through the head. But no, Rudy's like, oh, wait a minute. I have a funny line to deliver. And he squirts him with a couple squirts of rum while Merlin has his lighter open and the fucker bursts into flames, man. It's not napalm. Even if it was 151 in that rum, which it's not because you can't fucking sip rum that strong.
Oh, you can't.
Okay.
College John has some words for you.
Okay, you and Ben Affleck could be squirting 151 into your mouth. But even so, has anyone ever seen a flambe dish? Like, it's not that much fire. You have to warm up the rum. And even then, it's like a little blue flame. It's not a fucking engulfed in raging red fire.
Even if it was pure rubbing alcohol, you're not getting that reaction out of it. Yeah, no, it's not.
It was an incendiary bomb. He just goes up in flames and flies out the window. And it establishes a theme because everything else in the movie then goes up in giant, overly explosive flames.
Yeah, everything from this point on in the movie is bad.
Yeah.
Like real bad. First of all, let's get into Monster and Ashley's plan, which is essentially to just write letters to every fucking convict they could find and hope that one of them has a harebrained plan or used to work security somewhere so that they can like recruit them for a heist. Is that essentially what their plan was? Is that understanding it?
You're going down a dangerous path of trying to actually work out the logic of this movie.
He's like, oh, we invested in stationery because cons are lonely. And, you know, we figured one of them would have some insider information. How many convicts was she corresponding with by this point till they found one that kind of fucking, we know then obviously that's not exactly the case, but
yeah, because that's what Monster thinks the thing was. His girlfriend helped him cook up a scheme to find a guy who would help them do a heist that they wanted to do.
It's the dumbest fucking plan I've ever heard. Classifieds for convict pen pals, right? Like they have these little classified ads in the back of like magazines.
That's what they seem to be describing. I don't know if that's a real thing, where that
I think it used to be. Yeah, I think that's a thing. But of course, then we find out that's not really.
Yeah, that's what Monster thinks is going on. But she's playing Monster on behalf of her real boyfriend, Nick. So their whole love letter thing was staged the whole time to impress both Rudy and Monster to make Monster recruit Rudy. How did she know Rudy was going to fucking get off that bus? I guess she knew she was hot. She didn't actually doubt that ever.
They do address that with a throwaway line. She's like, well, I would have just convinced them that they could do it without you.
Oh, yeah. Why didn't they? It would have been so much fucking simpler.
Lazy screenwriting. When you heard his whistle from off screen, I literally said, go fuck yourself out loud to nobody, just by myself in my home, because I was like, you kidding me with this shit? This is one twist too many. It doesn't make sense. It's just way too convoluted for what this movie is. You know, you could have made a lean, mean heist thriller at 93 minutes or whatever, and it would have been fine. But now you're putting mysteries on top of mysteries and all these twists, and you just fucking convoluted storylines and all these schemes. Everyone's such a schemer. It's too much, man. It's one twist too many.
There's a thing like, if you're going to do a big twist at the end of the movie, it should be amazing. And we know that Shyamalan has achieved that once or twice in his career. And what it does, when the twist hits, your mind races back through the rest of the movie. Sometimes you get some little flashbacks. The director helps you see what you missed, but you're like, oh my God,
Hold your
that.
hand a little, yeah.
Yeah, you go that and that and that. Oh my God, that's so cool. There's joy in the flashbacks or in retracing your steps and figuring out the secondary meaning of what was going on. And this, there's no joy. There's just work. There's just like, what? You did what? That was fake? How did that work? Well, I guess it could have made sense, but there's no fun. There's no payoff in it. It's just more confusion.
Right. And if you go back and watch the movie again, it doesn't put any scenes in a new light. There's no new way to watch it where you're like, oh, look at this trail of breadcrumbs they left us. Like,
right. That's none of that
there's none of that. You're completely in the dark, even the second time around.
Yeah. You're like, what is that? I guess.
It doesn't inform any of the character's actions up until that point when he walks out screen. It's literally just fucking bait and switch.
Yeah.
Disappointing. But it does lead to, first of all, it was, I don't know, satisfyingly crunchy when Rudy backs the car up into Nick's legs.
Yeah.
That was visceral and violent. Like, he was like, oh, they didn't shy away from the bone crunching noise. And
no, that's a good description.
The gooiness of the soft tissue.
I also found that satisfying. Yeah.
But then Nick tries to, barter his way out and be like, we could split the money, blah, blah, blah. You got to believe me. And then Rudy's big payoff line is, believe this. Really? That's your fucking line? First, it's not even, there's nothing clever about it. It doesn't call back to anything in the movie.
It's not anything. It's just, in that way, it's like real world, what someone would say, just an angry, stupid retort. But it's not your hero's sign-off line on the big bad guy.
For a movie this overwritten, that's what you come up with. He loved the little drummer boy. He should have been like, parumpa-pum-pum, bitch. That's still stupid, but at least it's funnier.
At least it's funny, and you could have set it up. This is not set up by anything. And actually, he has two like signature tough guy lines before that, as he's throwing the car into reverse because he's broken out and he's hot-wired it. He's like, rule number 1, don't put a car thief in a car or something. Like you're making rule number 1 at the end of the movie that has nothing to do with any rules you ever made or setup that you ever talked about. They're just like, these are some amateur hour payoff lines for the hero.
If we're going to be doing numbered rules, we should be on rule 3 for this last one. That's the rule of 3. Everyone knows this. It's just bad writing. And I did love that you brought this up in the notes. I can't believe I didn't put a note about it. It's a cool scene seeing a tractor trailer go off a cliff because it's just not something you see a lot. It's probably really expensive. And as far as I could tell, they used a real tractor trailer and they just slowly let it fall. And it's impressive to watch. But then this tractor trailer that has nothing in it just goes up like it was fucking packed with dynamite.
Just huge fireball, like the fucking Death Star.
This is like late 90s, early 2000s filmmaking at its absolute finest. Just everything explodes no matter what.
It's an absolute self-parody when you see, because we know this trailer was empty. It's one thing if you send a truck, you go, oh, they were hauling the dynamite back, or oh no, it's a
We've established
gasoline
these
truck.
guys are gun runners. Show them with some fucking grenades or at least some bullets, like gunpowder, something explosive back there.
Oh yeah, maybe there was something. No, but they fucking show. That's the thing.
No, this thing's empty. He backs up into Nick, and it's empty when he does it.
Yeah,
Nick's at the back of the trailer.
We've seen it over and over. There's nothing but plywood walls in this fucking empty trailer, and then it goes over the cliff, and it's one thing like if the cab blew up, maybe there was 200 gallons of diesel in those fuel tanks, but like end to end, it blows up. And then they show the shot of Ben Affleck looking over the cliff. They show one shot of this fireball coming up, just gigantic, enormous explosion. You've never seen anything like it until Dune 2021. Right. And then they show Ben Affleck's face, who's looking at the fireball. He actually has his head craned over the edge of the cliff, but does he shrink back from the giant wave of flame coming towards his face? No, he just stares into it and grins and chuckles because he's impervious to flame.
Just completely unimpressed by this enormous nuclear level fireball he just set off.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, like heat rises.
He should at least have a pretty noticeable tan, I would say. And then he walks from this cliff to Sidnaw, Michigan, wearing a bloody Santa suit after a bunch of Santas robbed a casino in a super bloody gunfight.
He's walking the roads.
Is he the dumbest fucking person alive? Change your clothes. Figure something out. You've got millions of dollars in a fucking sack. I'm sure there's a 24-hour Walmart somewhere you could run into and buy a pair of sweatpants, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, doesn't make any more sense than anything else in the movie. He's just shuffling along the road at night for miles and miles. Like we see him, he's walking for half the night, and then he sees the sign that says his hometown is 15 miles away. So he has another 15-mile walk through the snow.
Which 15 miles is about 5 hours, if you're walking at a good 3 mile an hour pace.
In the freezing cold in the snow on the side of the road. It's awful. Like he's lucky he didn't die. But no, he was just happy as a clam, just dropping off stacks of money in strangers' mailboxes.
And this is another thing. We have no indication up to this point that he is this altruistic Robin Hood character that just wants to give away all this money, these ill-gotten funds. You know, he had concocted this plan before he knew Ashley was a villain to steal the money and run away with her.
Yeah.
Is he going to give it all away then, or is he just realize, you know, this money's dirty, I don't want it? I don't know, but either way, this is fucking harebrained. Filling up everybody's mailbox. If I went to the end of a lot of these mailboxes are right next to each other. I open up my mailbox and there's a fucking fat stack of cash in there. Am I going to peek in my neighbor's mailbox to see if they also got a fat stack of cash that they won't miss? I might. I can't say. It depends what bills I got due that month. You know, I don't know. What's my financial situation?
The whole other story.
Like a wealthy area.
No, I want to see that movie.
And then you have Reindeer Games too, where one of the neighbors is going around, and then you start going up and down the block checking everyone's mailbox. Another thing is the mailman. How does he know that they're all going to check? It's Christmas. A lot of people are out of town. You know, theoretically, the mailman might be the first person to get to that mailbox.
Rudy don't give a shit. He's such a happy-go-lucky Robin Hood character that, I don't know. It's a shallow attempt to try to make him into some redeeming character that he wasn't at the ends, just so you could have this end scene that's very cutesy. Santa is giving away the money, and then all he wants is to sit at his Christmas table with his family in this fucking Charles Dickens scene at the end. I expected Tiny Tim to pop out and go, "God bless us, everyone." Like, he's just grinning like an idiot sitting at his Christmas table, and he's still wearing the Santa suit. Is that right? He
covered in blood.
Didn't even put on something warm when he got home to sit down for Christmas.
It probably smells like Merlin's burning flesh because he was standing fucking 5 feet away from this guy when he went up in a huge fireball. Like,
with rum and burnt flesh. Yeah, it's awful.
It's fucking terrible. It is clearly like a last-ditch redemption effort to try to make him into this noble hero, but he never was much of a hero. He was an anti-hero at best. The plot only moves forward because he's willing to basically seduced by deceit,
right?
The Ashley character, which is like a pretty monstrous thing to do, to lie to someone to have sex with them under false pretenses.
It is. And it's fun as far as like the moral story of the movie. If you'd left it there, it would be an intriguing film, right? Here's a 2-bit criminal. He does this terrible thing at the beginning of the movie that you're like, oh, fuck, I can't believe he did this. And then he pays for it right away. Shit goes bad. This horrible gang comes into his life and makes his life hell. And that is interesting.
Instant karma. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. But then you go all the way to the end of the movie and then you reverse the whole thing. He's not a selfish hero who has to dig out of the mess he made. He's the victim. He's a nice guy that just wants to give people money and have Christmas dinner. And he was the victim of this devilishly clever plot. And he could have never knew that everyone was working against him this whole time. And he just made it a different movie. And that movie's not fun.
No, the movie fumbles the bag, so to speak, at the end here in a big way, in a lot of ways. But yeah, I've changed my opinion of this movie since we started.
Yeah, tore it down.
Much more negative. But
whatever was there, we just shredded it and we pushed it off a cliff and it exploded in flames.
So that was Reindeer Games. Took us a while to get through that story.
Convoluted story.
Very plotty. Yeah, a lot going on. Do you want to see where all these characters went to after this? Not the characters themselves, but the actors involved.
Yeah. What was the fallout of this heist gone wrong?
It's hard to say what impact this would have had on Frankenheimer's career because, as we mentioned, sadly, he passed away only 2 years after the film's release. But he did make another movie. It just was a TV movie called Path to War, which was well received. It was made for HBO, I believe, but it got good reviews. Everyone seemed to like it. It was hailed as a return to form. And so that's what we can think of as his real last movie.
Oh, that's a nice story. That's better than ending with this.
I alluded to it earlier. It was written by a writer named Aaron Kruger, who's still very active in Hollywood today. He's written some good stuff. He wrote Arlington Road, which got mixed reviews at the time, but I think it's good. It's like a twisty drama horror movie about bombers, like your neighbor being a domestic terrorist.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
The Ring, you can argue, though, how much screenwriting you really had to do on The Ring, because you're just adapting a hit movie for another audience. I know there were some significant changes made, but it's still got the bones of the same story that Ringu had from Japan. So that one gets like a half a point in my book for him, because it's a great movie. I love The Ring, but how much of that was really him? But then most of his movies are bad that he's written. The Ring 2, not great. Various Transformer movies, not the first one, which is okay. All the bad ones that came after.
Not known for their writing.
No, writing is not their strong suit. The Ghost in the Shell remake from 2017, I think it was, with Scarlett Johansson.
Ooh, a problematic movie.
Problematic and also bad. He was one of a bajillion writers credited on Top Gun Maverick, which is coming out soon.
Oh boy.
But The people he's writing it with are guys like Christopher McQuarrie, who's a good writer. So I have faith that he'll salvage that movie, hopefully. And Eric Warren Singer also got some good notches under his belt. So I'm hoping he can't do too much damage to that one. But yeah, not a very prestigious career. Certainly he's made a lot of money screenwriting, but he hasn't made a lot of movies I enjoy watching.
He's working. Good for him. He didn't have to become a long haul trucker.
The hardest job in the world, according to Gabriel Monster, whatever the fuck
At this
his last
point, he
name
would
is.
have certainly gone mad and started doing horrible crimes.
So Affleck's career went into a bit of a tailspin, as I mentioned, after this movie. He had been in some good stuff before this. He was in Boiler Room, a movie I have a deep affection for. Dogma, which Kevin Smith movies haven't aged well for me personally, but I understand a lot of people still like them. That's considered one of the better ones. Hard one to watch now, because I think like in some weird contractual agreement, Harvey Weinstein owns that movie personally, like not Miramax or anyone like so. It's just not available anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Unless you sail the high seas, yar. But so that's weird. Shakespeare in Love, which won Oscars. It's not my cup of tea, but that's fine. And Armageddon, which is stupid as shit, but entertaining.
Yeah. Armageddon did a lot. That's where I feel like he was Ben Affleck, the young movie star.
He was out of the shadow of his duo with Matt Damon and on his own and starring top billed in big movies that made a lot of money. So after this was Pearl Harbor, which did make back its budget, but is a movie I don't think anybody would stand up for today. It's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad movie. Bounce, a movie I've somehow completely forgotten existed, or I never knew. I assume I knew it existed at some point, but it's with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay.
Who he dated around this time.
Not ringing bells, but
and some more bad movies that did badly. And then he snapped out of it when he directed Gone Baby Gone in 2007, but he does not appear in that movie. He directed his brother Casey in the starring role, but people were like, oh, he might have a future directing. I love Gone Baby Gone. I think it's a great movie. And then he directed himself in The Town in 2010, and that was the beginning of his renaissance as an actor.
Yeah, I have problems with The Town, but...
What are your problems with The Town, you son of a bitch?
One of my screenwriting gurus has taken some of the story choices apart and shown why they were not the best. But I liked it.
I will fucking fight you.
Okay.
For Town slander.
We'll go outside after this.
If you don't like The Town, then what can you say about Den of Thieves, which is like The Town Junior, which The Town is like Heat Junior. So The Town is Heat Junior, and then Den of Thieves is like Heat the Third.
Oh, man.
And I love all three of them with all my heart. So you just can't beat like putting a crew together for one big score. I don't know. It's like the perfect setup for a movie for me.
Yeah.
Plus you got Jeremy Renner doing all kinds of weird stuff before he was like a known weirdo with his own app.
Right.
So,
yeah. Renner stuck out as weird to me in The Town.
Yeah. He's doing weird stuff, but in a good way. It's the good kind of weird. But I love that movie.
Okay.
So, but I'd be interested in reading your screenwriting guru's thoughts about The Town, because I know it's not a perfect movie. I was being a little hyperbolic when I said I would fight you for saying anything bad about it.
Yeah. It's centered around the idea that Affleck's character goes back and meets the girl in very safe places around town. Like he knows where she hangs out. So after doing this bank heist where he meets this teller, it's him then meeting her at the dry cleaner and the Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. And the screenwriting guy's like, he shouldn't know where she lives. He should have to go back to the bank if he wants to chat her up again and put himself in big visceral danger instead of putting him in these safe places and having the rest of his crew tell him why it's dangerous.
Okay.
I don't know if that does that much to actually tear down the movie, but it's an interesting point of view on those choices.
It was adapted from a book called Prince of Thieves that I read. Okay. So I think his issue may be more with the writing than the directing.
Yeah, that maybe didn't have to do with Ben Affleck at all.
Yeah. Good director of action, though, as we learned in The Town. Like, those Boston streets are terribly confusing, and he really, like, puts you in the center of that, makes you feel like you're driving around the fucking north end of Boston, which is just a terrible place to drive a car.
That's cool. I got to go back. Knowing your love for it, I got to go give that movie a rewatch.
So Theron followed it up with The Yards, a good movie, a James Gray movie, one of my favorite directors that wasn't really a hit. And then Men of Honor was a small role for her, but that was a pretty good size hit, quadrupled its budget or around there. But then 2003 was her arrival when she had the Oscar-winning performance in Monster, and she also had a prominent role in The Italian Job.
Yeah.
She seemed like she entered another level of movie star, and that she hasn't left. She's still top billing huge movies to this day and doing great stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting when I look back, her career is not as studded with big hits until that 2003, like you said. Like that's where she's suddenly on the map because she's both in a prestige film and she's a glamorous action star in 1 year. And you're like, oh, this lady owns Hollywood. She's the best. And she was great before that. But that list of movies, when you go through, there are not that many big names that jump out at you.
No, and she was like just the wife in a lot of movies, like The Devil's Advocate and Cider House Rules. And she came into her own right around 03, and she's had just an exceptional career. Some duds too, like Ion Flux is a real bad movie, and Hancock is like half a good movie and half a real shit movie. But, she's in more good than bad, I would say. And she was in fucking Fury Road. That's like a lifetime pass.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
and Arrested Development did a lot to sell me on loving her forever.
Yeah, that was 05. So that was after she hit the star. But it was her biggest move into comedy that we'd seen yet. So
yeah, that was fun.
Sinise had just made The Green Mile when this came out. So he was on a high. That was a nice big role for him, reuniting with Hanks from Forrest Gump and Apollo 13. They've done some good stuff together. But he followed this up with Mission to Mars, another big bomb, which was that was De Palma too, yeah.
Yeah, I remember talking about Mission to Mars, and I've never seen it, but that was a De Palma bomb.
So we did a De Palma movie and then a Gary Sinise movie, and sometime in the near future, we'll probably end up doing a Brian De Palma and Gary Sinise movie, whether it's Snake Eyes or Mission to Mars. We got a couple to choose from.
Oh yeah, we got to round them up. Get back in the zone, boys.
He hasn't done as much movie acting, though, recently, which is probably by choice. He's got the cushy CSI New York job that he did for 10 years. Yeah. I'm sure those paychecks were nothing to sneeze at. Did a season of Criminal Minds Beyond Borders, and then he was in that Netflix show, 13 Reasons Why, which wasn't really for us. I feel like that was like a young adult type thing, but it was a hit. So he probably played someone's dad.
And he's extremely focused on his charitable work. So I can see why, as serious an actor as he was one of those guys who'd formed a theatrical company as a young man and was very serious about acting. But then I can see him just switching gears and turning into a working TV actor, collecting the big money and then following his second passion.
Yeah. He's always been one of those actors for me that like when I take a movie more seriously when he's in it, which was part of the reason maybe why I gave Reindeer Games a little more slack than it deserved. Because I was like, fucking Gary Sinise is in it. Like, how bad could it be? I've just never seen him be bad in anything. He's been in bad stuff, but I think he's an exceptional actor. But we went over in the monologue why I think this movie bombed. It's a fucking Christmas movie that was released in late February, which is just a terrible thing. And the whole 9 yards was also unceremoniously dumped, but ended up being a little bit of a hit. And you could see there's probably a lot of overlap in the audiences that would go to see one or the other. And the whole 9 yards was getting better word of mouth, obviously. Reindeer Games was hated by critics when it came out. So if you had to go see one, which one are you going to see?
Yeah, there probably isn't room in February for two similar movies to both hit. But I wonder, when you talk about the February release of a Christmas movie, was that cause or was that effect? Like, it sounded like they knew that this thing sucked and they're like,
oh yeah, they were burying it at that point. And I don't mean to say that the whole 9 yards is like a masterpiece, because I don't love that movie either, but it had Bruce Willis at the height of his powers, Matthew Perry just off, I think, was Friends still going or had it just ended? Either way, he was a big name at the time, and Amanda Peet was a hot star at the moment, and critics liked it a little more than Reindeer Games. It wasn't a critical darling, but it had a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is certainly better than the 25% Reindeer Games got. Again, Rotten Tomatoes is not the best way to judge a film's quality. No, I don't mean to make that point, but it's, a quick barometer you can look at and get a sense of what was coming out about the movie at the time.
Yeah, all you needed was a little boost to get over on this movie, and that was enough to sink the reindeers in the deep snow.
So that's my theory as why this movie bombed. But Ian is well known and loved for his wrap-ups that he likes to give about movies and maybe why they failed or what went wrong with them or what we should take away from them. So please feel free to regale us with one.
Well, today I have not so much a final thought as a final twist. Hold on to your seats, folks. The movie Reindeer Games doesn't actually exist. We made it up. Ben Affleck, not a real guy, made up name. John and I aren't podcasters. We are long-haul truck drivers, and we just wanted someone to listen to us talk after all these lonely years on the road. And you, dear listeners, dear Blastoids, you fell for the con. How does that feel to be suckered like that? And now we're going to walk out of here and go eat some holiday dinner with our families. And hopefully you all do too.
Catch me eating pecan pie with my bare fucking hands like an animal. Because
shovel it in with your fingers.
We are going to take a 1 week break to give ourselves some time to reset. We'll be back in the new year with a fun one. Well, a painful one, but a fun one. We're going to be talking The Dark Tower.
Wow. Big one.
Which that hurts my soul because I was a big fan of the Dark Tower books and was very excited about the casting of Idris Elba as Roland.
A lot of potential in that one, and we'll see how it turns
then
out.
The movie came out, and we'll see. I haven't seen it since theaters, so January 5th, keep your eyes peeled for that one. Again, we'll be off the 29th. Go enjoy, your family in the new year.
Yeah, have a happy holiday, everybody.
So please remember, if you're on Apple Podcasts, rate, review, subscribe to the pod. Give us that 5-star rating, baby. You know we deserve it. Follow us on Twitter. A little gift for us, yeah. At Blast Zone Pod. You can email us, blastzonepod@gmail.com. Again, let us know, what was up with those darts? Could they have killed our hero Rudy? How much danger was he in?
We got to solve this.
And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.